Hello, Wake Up New Zealand, Carol Sakey speaking. Well, just a bit of food for thought whilst I throw a spanner into the works, and it's definitely worth talking about. So, I'm just wondering why no one ever questions what the crown really is. It's a very familiar word and it's brought up continuously and it's always in our face, the word the crown. Why do we just take that for granted? What does that mean? Is it a legal fiction, an abstract entity? This crown that appears to be the essential symbol as to treaty claims, the gravy train, policies, laws that govern New Zealand. So it has immense power, the crown, and the representative of the crown, who is the Governor General, she plays this role as a representative of the Queen of England. The crown is that role she plays a fictional role, a fictional concept, an abstract concept. So, we're talking about the crown, the essential symbol of the treaty. We're talking about the crown partnering Maori, iwi, when it comes to the Resource Management Act that's now being repealed, and about the control of all water in New Zealand, where Maori have veto rights. The crown, detrimental to partnerships mentioned in the treaty, is the partnership itself a legal fiction, because it's not mentioned in the treaty. So the power, the status, the wealth, the elitism of minor proportion of the minority group. Not all. The crown used as a tool and a weapon, a friend, a foe, a love and hate relationship, a bipolar relationship, an abstract concept or an abstract entity is the legal fiction. And it's well worth asking all those questions. Are we just taking it for granted for what the crown really is? So you have some legal commentators have called the crown a legal fiction, so that the government has a way of separating themselves from being accountable, responsible for their inadequacies. A stopgap. It's quite objectionable. Do we have an understanding of that word crown, what it means to us? Have we misunderstood the words when it comes to portraying the crown as government? The Governor General, a representative of the Queen of Britain, the crown. The so-called crown that's played the major part of being the gravy train for decades. It's robbed billions of dollars from taxpayer pockets, that's allowed iwi to own seabed, foreshore, the radio waves from 1989 to 1995, your taxpayer pockets paid out over $7 billion, and it continues and continues and continues. The crown is the gravy train that's dishing out your hard-earned taxpayer dollars. Yes, the crown, the essential partner of treaty claims. Does the crown represent a proxy state of New Zealand? In 2011, former Attorney General Margaret Wilson said, "The crown is a useful fiction that enables government to distance themselves from direct responsibility under the obligation of the treaty, so we can't hold them responsible." The crown that is used as a legal core signatory is useful as a legal fiction. Should we question how the crown is used? with its enormous power and authority. The continuous and over decades robbing of our New Zealand taxpayer pockets. Is the Crown an imaginary spear? You have to ask yourself that. Michael Walzer, 1967, wrote, "The state is invisible. It must be personified before it can be seen, symbolized before it can be loved, imagined before it can be conceived." The Crown has been symbolized, loved, imagined, conceived. It is a symbol of political rituals. The Crown, a legal fiction manifested by the state, a symbol of expression, idea that people believe in. The government, who represents the people of New Zealand, they believe that is the Crown. So what does the Crown represent? Has the symbol of the Crown grown out of proportion as years have gone by, and we haven't even thought about having it explained to us? Is it an abstract construct? So in the mid-2000s, Tiriana Turia, Associate Minister of Maori Affairs at the time, suggested that the Crown ought to be doing something to fulfil its commitments under the Treaty of Waitangi. She referred to the Crown as a political entity distinct from the government. So there you have it. So who's the Crown? Distinct from the government, cabinet, and from her own role as minister. She used the words it, they, not we, a strategic political positioning. The Crown has been typically portrayed as other and commonly viewed as unified sovereign entity that stands above ministers, parliament and the executive, between the status of the Crown as a legal and technical concept, a separation between theory and action, the Crown being the ally and the enemy, an idea, a symbolic form. Government, the Crown, so useful to use. The Crown relates to the Queen of Britain, the Governor-General of New Zealand, her role to represent the Queen of England, the Governor-General. Part of her role performs royal assent, signs off bills in Parliament that become laws that govern New Zealanders. She's paid a huge salary out of your taxpayer pockets. Under Section 5(1) of the Governor-General Act 2010, her salary is $371,900 per year, with a review of her salary in October this year. So the Crown represents the Queen, the Governor-General represents the Queen, but New Zealand, it's legally independent of Britain. The Queen represents Britain. So why have we got a representative of the Crown passing laws, making deals with taxpayer pockets? Our money out of our taxpayer pockets. Doesn't make sense. New Zealand gained full legal independence when Parliament passed the Constitution Act of 1986. New Zealand is legally independent from Britain. Britain is not part of New Zealand. So why is the Crown represented here in New Zealand? So the Crown, therefore, surely is an abstract concept, I would say, an abstract entity, a legal fiction that is used politically to rule, control New Zealanders. It's a useful political tool. So when we hear the Crown, do you think of British monarchy, the Queen, Parliament, the state, government? What do you think of? Because most people do. The Crown Question: does that mean we have a proxy state in New Zealand? Does it have a legal standing in New Zealand? One High Court judge, when referring to the Crown, summed it up as following: sometimes the Crown is a political entity, a useful target against which to aim your bullets. Sometimes it's a personal thing, capable of maintaining a personalized relationship that tends to be a traditionally romanticized Maori view. Sometimes it's a legal entity that's often used when politicians chop and change between governments and Crown sites. It appears to me the Crown can be anything, people. Anything the government wants it to be. A stopgap. Anything that the Maori Party want it to be. Anything the radical activist Maori want it to be. Anything the radical non-Maori want it to be. So, according to the New Zealand government, the Crown has all sovereign rights, the Queen, absolute monarchy, the head of state, yet in 1986, New Zealand legally gained its independence from Britain. So, the Public Finance Act and Crown Proceedings Act document, the Crown says, sovereign in right of New Zealand and Her Majesty in right of New Zealand. But the representative of the Crown, that is an abstract entity, signatured the bill, because the representative of the Queen, the Crown, is the Governor-General, who has the power of royal assent to sign off bills and make them laws in Parliament. So this must have been signed, this act as a bill must have been signed by royal assent by a representative of the Queen of England. Therefore, any bills signed off by royal assent by the Governor-General, the Queen's representative, are they legal? Or are they a legal fiction? Why does the Crown, that is a symbol of monarchy of England, of Britain, have so much power when we're independent of Britain? The Crown therefore appears, it is abstract. It's an abstract entity, a legal fiction. One minister said, we talk about the Crown because Maori talk about the Crown, a collaboration of government and Crown. Well, we have Crown Enterprises, Crown Prosecutors, Crown Law, a set of Crown stamp of approval, but we have our own independent identity as a country. So why do we have all of this? The Crown, a detached legal fiction of higher authority. The Crown is seen by many as something much bigger than the nation itself. Now I'm confused. What is the Crown? So I'm just putting it out there and asking what you think about this. Why do we have a Crown that controls New Zealand when the Crown represents the Queen of England, and yet we gain legal independence from Britain in 1986. So the Crown has prerogative powers that are not controlled by a single legal instrument. It's food for thought, people. So, yes, think about that one. And I'm looking forward to some responses because obviously I can't get my head around this one. Thank you. Please share, and subscribe.